So my journey started, so I always loved performing arts from when I was really little, probably a little bit of a drama queen. And when I was 11, I actually, it's sort of a sad story that took a really nice turn in the sense of I was having a bit of a tough time at school. I used to get bullied a little bit. And I was flicking through the paper at home one day, one Sunday at the breakfast bar, and I saw this advert for Tring Park School of Performing Arts. And I said to my mum, I want to go there, like, please let me go. And she was like, really? I don't know, Tilly, like, you were Cinderella in the year six play, but that's about it. So I was like, okay, well, just let me audition, mum, let's see what happens. So I went along and I did my audition and I got in, and obviously I was absolutely thrilled. And that really started my journey, like pursuing my passions.
From Coordinate Sports, it's The Drive Phase, a show about sports founders, leaders and experts and the stories behind their business journeys. This week, we welcome Stagecoach Performing Art. And joining us are Joe Scapello, Group Marketing Director, and Tilly James, Principal of Stagecoach Buckingham. Stagecoach are the pioneers in performing arts for young people, having launched and expanded their model of teaching weekly, combined dancing, singing and acting lessons over 30 years ago. The brand is now a global powerhouse with a network of 350 franchisees across 9 territories. During our wide-ranging conversation, we hear how the team instill a culture of teaching creative courage for life at the core of the organisation, and we hear firsthand just what it's like operating a Stagecoach school. A compelling interview with some really valuable takeaways we all can learn from. So sit back and enjoy. So I'm delighted to welcome Joe Scapello, Group Marketing Director, and Tilly James, Principal of Buckingham Stagecoach, the global franchise teaching singing, dancing and acting to children and young people for over 30 years. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Hi, Jane.
I'm a little bit nervous here because obviously performing arts can dissect my performance and my delivery there. But no, I really appreciate you being on. And it's great to have kind of the two perspectives from head office, like obviously global head office and a franchisee to talk to us today. So thanks very much for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you for having us.
So what we normally do to start with is just look at kind of getting to know you a little bit better in your kind of early years. So normally we talk about school and how things started for you and performing arts. So I know it's slightly different for the two of you. So I don't know if Tilly, if you want to start in terms of your journey into Stagecoach.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having us today. So my journey started, so I always loved performing arts from when I was really little, probably a little bit of a drama queen. And when I was 11, it's sort of a sad story that took a really nice turn in the sense of I was having a bit of a tough time at school. I used to get bullied a little bit, and I was flicking through the paper at home one day, one Sunday at the breakfast bar, and I saw this advert for Tring Park School of Performing Arts. And I said to my mum, I want to go there, like, please let me go. And she was like, really? I don't know, Tilly, like, you were Cinderella in the year six play, but that's about it. So I was like, okay, well, just let me audition, mum, let's see what happens. So I went along and I did my audition and I got in, and obviously I was absolutely thrilled. And that really started my journey, like pursuing my passion. So
was that your first audition then? So you just saw it in the paper and thought, I'll go for that?
Yeah, I guess a little bit of creative courage for life, as Stagecoach might say, just really going for it and just seeing what happens. And actually, it's always a funny story we laugh about, because I turned up and there were all these girls with high buns and ballet belts, and I was in an Adidas tracksuit with a side ponytail thinking I looked really cool. So I auditioned, and my mum actually, when we got to the gate, she was like, I think we should just go home. But I was like, no, mum, I'm going to have a go. I'm just going to go and do it. And it was the best 5 or 6 years of my life. I absolutely loved it, and it instilled in me this lovely sense of like work ethic and kind of passion for performance. And also through it, I really admired my teachers and the work they were doing. And it was something that from then on, I actually thought, I'd really love to teach and work with children and bring out this passion. So then, to skip a few years, I did a music degree at London College of Music. And whilst I was training, my friend rang me and said, Tilly, you've got to apply for Stagecoach. I've just done some work there, and I was teaching singing. It's such a lovely environment, because I was working in house Harrods as well, and working in a bar as well, like to just keep,
Yeah, juggling everything
I think you when you're a
to fulfill
student
the dream. Yeah.
and gigging and singing jazz on the side. And he was like, seriously, Tilly, just go and do it. You'll love it. So I applied and I worked for a lovely school in Isleworth. And the principal there really took me under her wing. And I stayed with her for close to 10 years and sort of like developing my teaching and working in the ethos Stagecoach, which is like confidence is really at the heart of it, and bringing that out in the students. And eventually came back to my roots in Milton Keynes, and Buckingham was available. And I said to, my family, like, I think I've got to go for it. I've got to do it, because if I don't do it now, I never will. And honestly, as a performer who loves teaching, which I always think is amazing for performers if they love teaching, because it just gives them another string to their bow. As a performer that loves teaching, this is the best turn I've ever taken in my life, is working for Stagecoach.
I wanted to pick up on the school in Sir Tring Park, just for people who don't that's a specialist performing arts school. Is that funded? Was it like a scholarship that you went there on, or was it?
Yeah, so they do offer scholarships. And I don't know particularly what it is now, but it was originally a dance school that then branched out into musical theatre training. And they do offer scholarships and also Dadas, but I don't know if I'm really old and Dadas don't exist anymore. It's an absolutely amazing school. I actually trained in the same year as some really amazing actresses. Lily James, for one, was one of the in my cohort, and the alumni for that school. And yeah, it's an amazing school, and it's quite vigorous in terms of the day, because you start at sort of 7:30, 7:45, and you finish at 6:30 at night, because you're trying to get all of your academic lessons and your vocational all in one.
Yeah, almost double school then, right?
Yeah, double schooling. But honestly, some of the best times I've had ever, and some of my my longest standing friends are from there, and everyone's just got this lovely ethos and work ethic, and it's a wonderful opportunity to go there. But it's also the reason I love Stagecoach as well, because not everyone can go to those academies and those schools. Some people, it's just too far away, or it's just not something that they know of or they can access. And actually Stagecoach is something that really gives children the opportunity to do that. So actually at the time I hadn't seen Stagecoach, I was too little, but but actually it would have been something else that I would have loved to do, because it really offers, like I said, going to Arts Ed, or it's now Tring Park, was such an outlet for me from this sort of rough time I'd had at school, at secondary school. And I think Stagecoach also offers that for children. Like, some children are young carers, some are not getting on well at school, some just really can't access the academic, and they come on the weekend, and it's just like their creative outlet to really enjoy and tap into what they're really good at, or just meet that one friend that kind of gets them through the next week. So that's why it's really important to continue my journey with this network, because I think it just offers something that really special that I don't think you see in a lot of places.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, that's really good. Sorry, James, I was just going to say, to Tilly's point, that's one of the things that we fundamentally believe in. It is a safe space for children to
express
really
themselves.
who they want to be. And a lot of them can't do that within the confines of a normal academic environment, because they're more creative people. So when they're with like-minded people and there's no peer pressure in that environment, people just have a lot of fun, but also they discover a lot about themselves. And teachers like Tilly and all of the others in that sector, actually, they do a marvellous job for some of our children, because they see things in them that the children would never have known was in them themselves. And that's part of the reward as well, isn't it, Tilly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so rewarding when I think we spoke about it the last time we chatted, Joe, like when you have those students who they come to you and they say, I had a student who said to me on his first day, he came to me at break time, I said, by the way, Tilly, I won't be here next week. It's not for me. And then by the end of the day, he was like, oh, I love it. I really want to do it. And he's a young carer. And for him, it's been such a journey to just access this safe space where he can come and just enjoy. And at first he felt anxious because he didn't want to leave the person that he was caring for that amount of time. And he wasn't sure if it was for him. And, it really just changes their perception. And also the children, which I know we spoke about, who go onto stage, and sometimes the first show you're there and you have to hold their hands and say their lines with them, and the next show they're like, I don't need you, I'm fine, and they just go and do it, and you're like standing in the corner with a tear, or like, come and hold it together. But yeah, it's really rewarding. That's a brilliant word for it. every weekend's rewarding.
So Joe, then I want to kind of look into your upbringing, if that makes sense, where you started. I know maybe slightly different, so it wasn't through a performing arts route as such. What was your early childhood memories like? Do you involve in the school plays like that or not?
Well, no, I was terrified of anything like that. I had just a standard schooling, a typical comprehensive in the Northwest, and I was too scared to do anything like performing arts. It terrified me. I remember auditioning for a show in the secondary school just to be in the choir. That was as close as I dared even get, and then didn't.
I was normally the stagehand or something in my school.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what? I used to watch all of the kids that had the courage to be up there, which I just didn't have at that time.
Do you feel like that was, because we always talk about education and like first experiences essentially. So if your first experience of something is maybe not as positive, or it might put you off, especially at like tender ages. Do you think it was that, or just no one was really there to, like you're talking about the safe space, or there was no one there to kind of encourage you along those lines? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't really thought about it like that, but I suppose, there was a little bit, I suppose, in my background where I just never thought I'd be confident enough to stand on a stage and perform the way the kids, my peers, were doing. So probably was a little bit to do with encouragement and safe space. I was far too uptight as a small child to have even dared to take a risk. So there's probably a little bit about conditioning, different time, maybe in different era. Went to a normal comprehensive and then went and got a degree, but did it in marketing and advertising. But I've always loved live entertainment in any form or fashion, and always admired the performers that had the courage to be there. But what's interesting is in marketing, there is a bit of a crossover, because eventually you do have to develop some of those life skills which are going to help you sell a proposition or sell yourself to get a job. And we call it those essential life skills. And so, in a way, if I'd have had access to Stagecoach back then, I would have, I'd like to have thought my parents would have made me go to help me with that. I think these days there's a recognition from parents that it's actually essential to encourage that courage out of your children.
Yeah, the confidence, the transferable skills as well into all aspects of life. Totally. When you finished uni, I know you went into obviously marketing and advertising, but specifically, was it the gaming industry initially?
Well, so I left the Northwest. I worked initially at an economic development specialist, and then I came down to the golden pavements of London just for a more exciting life.
I was going to say golden arches. I thought he was stint in McDonald's then.
I definitely had those in the Northwest where I was. And I just wanted to do something different. So I came down to London, temped for a little bit, but went into the games industry first and started there just before, this is really going to age me, but just literally before PlayStation launched. I was on the European launch team.
Right, so you're right on the cusp of that taking off then, yes?
Yeah, exactly. And that was, such a brilliant time. But I'd gone down the business route by then and went into the games industry. And I was there 5 years. I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. But, like anything, you are hungry for more and wanting to try different things. And as I landed in London, I pretty much got the job straight away. So didn't know anything else about London and what it could offer and where my career might go. But I actually went from there to Nike, which was a bit of a departure from entertainment. But it was, brilliant. I spent about 4.5 years at Nike doing retail marketing, and again really loved that, because that Nike was interesting for me in my own career growth because of the culture that they nurtured with everybody that was there. And that was that it was almost like a safe space to experiment and be yourself and take risks, but calculated risks. And so that gives you a different perspective on things.
If you want somewhere to learn how to be a marketer, I'll get Nike. You can't get a better place than Nike, right, in terms of what they're...
Absolutely. And there was some incredible things that I was able to do there because they kept a very open mind about taking risks and marketing things in a very different way. And so, it was personally really good for me to go there. And I'd had, when I first went down and joined Sony, it was a European role. So I'd gone straight into marketing at a European level. But actually, the reason I went to Nike was because I thought, I haven't got any marketing experience, and I wanted to look after the UK, and I looked after all of their retail marketing at the time, and so that again gave me a kind of a a different approach to marketing, because normally you start off at the fundamentals of marketing something locally, and then you go to nationally, and then you go to internationally. And actually I'd gone in directly at international level, but didn't have the local marketing or the national marketing experience. So it was a flip of how you normally do it, but it was really good.
I'm sure all of that experience is going to be really stand you in good stead to come in and set your strategy and lead the marketing at Stagecoach. In terms of the kind of story behind Stagecoach and like the offer, I know obviously we're talking candidate. I'm quite familiar with Stagecoach. I've got 4 sisters and 2 daughters. I know exactly how it works. But in terms of our listeners, are you able to just expand on the offer? So you said, what is a Stagecoach?
What is a typical
a typical school?
What does the franchise do?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I know it's Saturdays, but
well, it's not just Saturdays anymore. It did start off a long time ago as extracurricular performing arts activities. So we teach an hour of singing, an hour of dancing, and an hour of acting in one venue, and we rotate children of different ages around the discipline. So it's a busy school environment, and kids get a lot of crossover with different students and exposure to different age groups. And obviously right now that is contained within bubbles, so less so than normal. But in normal times, it's a busy school environment where you've got children inspiring their peers, but also being inspired by other students that are around the school. We do something called early stages, which is for our little ones that are 4 to 6. Our main stages are from kind of 6 or 7 through to about 18. But we also have a specialist program called Further Stages, which is for children that are aged anywhere from 14 to 18, which is more around honing those theatre skills, I would say. We know at that point kids really want to have a career in the performing arts. So it's okay, well, this is how you work as a theatre group, an ensemble group, and we're going to develop your skills in this way. And across those age groups, right from the age of 4 or even before, ultimately what we're teaching them is the art of really essential life skills, but through performing arts education. And through that process, they're able to build up resilience and confidence and expression and inspiring creative thoughts and so many more life skills, which we fundamentally believe are essential for our workforce going forward, not just in performing arts, but across the wider piece. Thinking creatively, you need to have that in engineering, you need to have that in nursing, you need to have that across the board. But it just so happens that performing arts is the vehicle that we use to teach all of that. And the outcomes are great. As we've mentioned before, you see children go from being like absolutely afraid to open their mouths to then leading the principal role in a show and having all the confidence of a lion at times. It's fantastic.
And then in terms of, I guess, origin story, just to touch on that shortly. I know you said 30 years old, or as we mentioned before before the show, as old as Tilly,
old as Tilly.
Yeah, so your Stagecoach is older than you. So in terms of the origin, are you able to just give us just a really potted history on that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned to you, I've been with the business 6 years, but I've met Steph, who was one of the co-founders, and she was an actress who had 4 children herself, and she created the model, the 3 hours, 3 disciplines model, because she found herself driving her child to one destination for an acting class, to another destination for singing classes, and another destination for dancing classes, and she wanted to bring them all together. So she created the model. She was an actress. She worked with a friend, and Stagecoach was born. And it was over 30 years ago now. We're in 8 countries around the world, and predominantly in the UK, but we're looking to go into other markets all the time. It's, there's a lot of interest in this sector right now for all the reasons I talked about before.
Definitely. And that's the franchise we'll touch on shortly. But I think in terms of that opportunity, like Tilly was saying, I'm from a sports background, but a lot, it does fit so nicely, because if you're as a young sports person or performer, you're trying to achieve something, you putting your heart and soul into getting there, but also you need to earn a living until you're successful. So that kind of using your skills that you've learned and you have is kind of the ideal job, I suppose, to new work. In terms of the wider group, I know at the moment it's Trafalgar Entertainment, and I'm really interested to talk about that in terms of how that's kind of almost like vertically integrated, right? You've got business models fantastic from a franchise point of view, assuming your retention's fantastic because they're starting at 4 and continuing to 18 every week. So from an offer for a franchisee or a business, it's great. So I don't know whether we can speak a little bit about the wider group and how everything kind of slots together. I know probably.
Yeah, I can talk about that. Let's talk about the lifespan of a student, because actually, until he's not far away from this, what we have an awful lot of in our business are people that started as students at whatever age, and then they go through their performing arts career. They might leave Stagecoach and go to university, or they come back. They go from student to teacher, and then from teacher to principal, or manager and then to principal. And some people just don't ever leave. And so we have a lovely mixture of people who had exposure to Stagecoach at a young age and then decide to come back as well and carry on that. I like to call it a virtuous circle, because it's just lovely having them come back. And we also have franchisees that are with us that just don't want to retire. I mean, we have a lot of franchisees that are well over retirement age that still love what they do and just don't ever want to let it go. That's really unique to us and wonderful, I think, as a broad mix of people.
I guess as the principal as well for recruit, if you're looking for new staff recruiting, you've almost got, it's an apprenticeship, I guess. Without it being an apprenticeship, they're coming through to learn about how you do things.
And we teach people a teaching diploma as well that people can, it's accredited by, this is going to test me now, I want to say RSL, but I might be wrong there. That gives people, even external teachers, a recognised qualification for teaching. So it can be much broader than just people coming to Stagecoach as well. But you're absolutely right. They do.
Tilly, I know Joe says you're close to that now. So how long have you had your location there, your school in Buckingham?
So 3 years actually. Just last month I first opened, but it's just has flown by. I can't believe it. It's crazy. Obviously, for part of that, it was over last year, but we were still running on Zoom and things. And I'm sure we might touch on all of that later. But yeah, so 3 years, and obviously I was in the network for about 9-10 before that. And then actually, even when I was working, when I first opened, I was only initially running the morning session. So I was still actually supporting another franchisee over in Banbury, doing singing in the afternoon, and also going down to Isleworth again to my roots, my Stagecoach roots, and running workshops for the principal there. So it is such a lovely family network, and everyone's always there to help and support each other. And I think something else really nice, as well as the teaching program, is we also I've affiliated with Duke of Edinburgh as well. So some of my students who are 16 and doing their Duke of Edinburgh also assist me in the school in the morning, which is really lovely. So they'll be on the desk, and they're picking up those confidence skills, like building a rapport with parents and taking notes. And so usually I'm running around, especially now we're in 25 bubbles. I don't know where I am, so I'm usually racing around, and they're always there at sort of the central point. And yeah, that's really lovely as well, because it's kind of a give and take. So they're building those skills for their Duke of Edinburgh, and then also learning and growing in terms of business skills and work customer service and building confidence, and still intact with their friends. The environment they've spent a lot of time in growing up and on a journey, which is really nice. And also my singing teacher was at Banbury Stagecoach. She started in early stages and now teaches singing for me. So, and she's amazing and gets the ethos as well, which is lovely.
So from the performance angle, obviously you're putting on shows and other performances, and that's why I was kind of looking at the wider group. Obviously with the Trafalgar group, you've got the theatre. I know obviously must have been a testing time in the last year or so, like with everyone, but was that almost a conscious decision by the group, and you might not know, but to engage with Stagecoach as almost I was just asking, in terms of the Trafalgar group, Stagecoach being part of that, was that a strategic decision to hopefully find talent and bring it through to the rest of the group?
Yeah, so the founders of Trafalgar Entertainment set up Ambassador Theatre Group about 30 years ago and ran it for 25 years. And, they are theatre lovers, obviously, but also they're entrepreneurs at the end of the day. And they wanted to set up a similar group, but actually they've taken it much broader direction this time. So yes, they've just acquired more theatres. They've got theatres, they've got a cinema, they've got theatre production companies as well. They've got theatre education and performing arts education. They stream performances around the world via cinema and different theatre spaces. There's theatre marketing. So it's quite a broad group. Oh, sorry, and I keep forgetting this. There's ticketing as well. So I like to call it a little ecosystem of performing arts businesses that all come together. What that offers us, and I think is the most exciting part of all of this, is that we as an organisation can offer students money can't buy experiences, or experiences that just aren't available to anybody else in the sector, because we can give them some backstage work experience. If they wanted to go down that route, we can give them exposure to shows. And we did something 2 years ago, actually, which was a really brilliant collaboration across the group, where we took some of our students to have an exclusive workshop for The King and I, which was touring around the UK at the time. So our students went down and had a workshop Q&A session with the cast, and then they watched the show. But some of our students also appeared in the London Palladium show of The King and I, which was filmed and therefore broadcast all the way around the world through our digital streaming business. Well, I mean, those are experiences that nobody else can offer to their children. So we think that there's a lot of opportunity across that broad mix of businesses that are included in Trafalgar Entertainment.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what I was really interested to see, that vertical integration. Like you said, it's hard to compete with, really. If you're looking for casting for a show, etc., they can go out to the network of all the Stagecoach schools, and it's a great idea. And obviously for you, Tilly, it's great to have those opportunities for your students as well, isn't it, to get involved?
Yeah, and it's wonderful because I think any opportunity to put things into practice, like Jo said, echoing what she said about our further stages, particularly when they're getting to that age where they're really channeling their creativity and actually thinking, is this something I could do as a profession, or looking to us as teachers at Stagecoach and thinking, I'd like to do that. I'd like to stay in this network and continue on this Stagecoach kind of legacy and do my, go on my own journey. It's really nice. And I try and I think I'm always emailing events, because obviously we're in Buckingham, so we're not in the sort of central hub, as it were, in London. But I think anything that I can offer to the student, to keep them engaged with performing and show them that, you can do it and there is a way and have a go, and all of this is just brilliant. And actually, Jo mentioned The King and I, and one of my students was in the tour of that. They were actually at the Milton Keynes production, Milton Keynes Theatre, last January. So that that was really special. And my further stages just on Sunday did their project for the National Theatre Connections Festival. And so again, just other fantastic opportunities to showcase the skills that we put into practice every weekend.
Yeah, and just while we're talking about that, I know there's going to be numerous famous alumni coming out of Stagecoach. Is there any you could mention for our listeners any household names that have come from attending Stagecoach as youngsters?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's loads. We talk a lot about Emma Watson, who was obviously, Belle in Beauty and the Beast. Jamie Bell, who was in, you're going to test me now, not Rocket Man. He was in, what's it called? You'll have to edit this. I can't remember what it's called.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Billy Elliot, yes, thank you. Yeah, we've got, I think it's Tom from McFly. There's loads of people. When actually we have students that are in things all of the time.
Current students as well, yeah.
Yeah, like Bella Ramsey, who was in Game of Thrones. She was a really great part in Game of Thrones as well. So there's loads, and apologies, I should have known this off the top of my head, but there's so many that I remember. I forget their names, but yeah, absolutely loads.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I was wondering about it is because it must make, and we're going to talk about marketing approach, things like that, the opportunities you've mentioned, the kind of the star names that have come out of the program, it must make marketing a lot easier, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's the case. And I know your numbers are up and kind of all the schools are flying at the moment after lockdown restrictions have eased. But just in terms of your approach to market and how that works across the networks, I know you're obviously going to set the strategy centrally, but how does that work and what's that support look like?
It's interesting you say, because you could trade off all of the alumni, you absolutely could, but we know that 70% of the parents that send their children to Stagecoach don't do it because they want their children to be the next big star. They want to send their children to Stagecoach so that they have those essential life skills that we've talked about lots and lots. And sometimes if you pin all of your marketing on a superstar, people think it's unachievable, and we aren't unachievable. We are accessible by everybody. So actually, we tend to market the life skills, the essential life skills, more than be a superstar. And by that, it makes it accessible to everybody, as I mentioned before, but also we can reinforce what could happen. It's the art of the possible once you're in. So we do talk about alumni, of course we do, but we don't bring people into our business on the back of a superstar because...
So you're not promising that they're going to be the next movie star. I think it does validate the quality as well. And if you say that these well-known names attended.
Absolutely, yeah.
In terms of marketing, is that something that's quite flexible and maybe the principals for each school can kind of have their own approach, or is it something that's set from top down?
Well, we are a franchise organisation and we are in 8 countries. And the important thing for our brand is that people know that you could be in Germany or you could be in Canada or you could be in Buckingham, and they're going to get exactly the same brand experience, the same product offering, the same quality, the same delivery in in the 3 disciplines, 3 hours, etc., the same model. And so the way we lead the franchise is by saying, here are your acquisition tools, which is the campaign, whichever campaign we have at the time, and then go and bring your customers in on that campaign, because that's how we're going to talk around the world about our brand. And then we allow all of the local franchisees will embellish and amplify that marketing on a local level by reaching out to their community and engaging more openly. So sometimes they might do events at a Tesco, or they might put a poster up in a coffee shop, or they might go and do a fete at their local hospice. And so they're really the franchisees are the creative ones that go out into the community and sell their business in the community. And what we do at a franchise head office organisation is provide the tools for them to do it. So there's a little bit of flexibility there as well.
And I know, Tilly, you obviously part of the network for a long time, but when you started in Buckingham, it was actually a startup, right? Greenfield site that you started. And what was that experience like, going from bringing nothing to launching the school and the site?
Well, it was really exciting, actually. And to be honest with you, as I mentioned before, I'd been working under the wing of this amazing principal in Isleworth, who had actually, when Stagecoach were piloting the management side, and it was the network was branching out into this lovely progression that you could have as a teacher to then become a manager and a principal. I actually opened up a school and managed it, but it was actually in the same building as the school that she already ran. So she could keep a very watchful eye over me and make sure I was, doing things, as they should be done. So I really, through that, kind of gained an understanding of how you build a school. And actually, I think sometimes as a teacher, I always actually make this joke that you sort of think that these students just grow on trees and they end up in your classroom and it's like, ta-da, they're here. But actually, there is an awful lot of back work and things like that you do that's amazing. And as with any business, you have to be willing to put the effort and the time in. Really fun, like Joe was saying, we've got amazing resources, and that's the beauty of starting a business and having it as a franchise and having that support net beneath you of lovely, campaigns that you can pick and choose from and really support you in your marketing. And on the other side of that, yes, you can go and find little angles to make it kind of really exciting. So Tesco's always let us do lovely promotion stands in there, and fates are another great thing, because once I had got up and running, I used to get some students down who would do a performance while I was standing there, which is really lovely. I actually found it a really enjoyable process. But it's just, and I think that's because of the network behind, building a small business is never going to be easy. But I think if you've got a lovely network beneath you and kind of giving you that element of support, it makes it even more enjoyable.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a safety net. I mean, in terms of when you first started, you launched your first class in Buckingham, what were your kind of numbers like as opposed to now, if that makes sense, the growth you've had?
Yeah, so I mean, it was obviously nerve-wracking when you first start. Stagecoach recommend that before you buy into the franchise, you do your due diligence on the area and just check it out for yourself. They've already done that as well, so they know that they're not sort of selling you a dud or anything like that.
I was going to pick up on that. So, Joe, in terms of your market research, or you're probably doing demographic analysis, etc., exactly.
Yeah.
Is it that you're saying, right, these localities, these territories, we have high demand, potentially unserved, therefore this is the next one for us to launch or to try and find a principal for? Is that so? You almost not guaranteed success, but it helps, doesn't it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And so all of our countries are mapped. And then what we do is with that mapping tool, we carve out territories. And in Tilly's case, we went, there's your territory. And we know it's a viable territory because we know there's X amount of families that live in there. And we know that a normal percentage of families will want to come to Stagecoach. And then, yeah, we do our homework that way. But also what Tilly's talking about is understanding where to market and how to speak to people. And the information that we provide the incumbent is around, we know this is the area where the high value customers live, and this is where the mid value customers are living. We know that they're quite aspirational, and this is how to get in touch with them from a media perspective and a tools perspective as well. If you're going to do a door drops, it's these postcodes. This is how to do your digital marketing with those postcodes. So it's quite in depth, and you obviously get that upon signing. But we would sell a viable territory to especially a greenfield. All the others tend to be proven because they're already, going and established. But one of the challenges that Tilly would have had with a greenfield is, whilst we have amazing brand recognition across the UK, I think it's about 82% of families that we talk to recognise our brand, which is amazing. If you haven't been in a particular territory, then it's harder to get the brand awareness going. So we always ask for, when you're going into a greenfield, that there's an increased contribution to marketing to get that going in your local area. You will obviously benefit from that national halo effect, but you need to get it going in your local area. And that's why we say to them, go and do your homework about where you can market and how you will market, and make your community links, because that community outreach is essential.
Yeah, and I guess that social media is key as well. And you've got that kind of social media flywheel, especially businesses like Stagecoach, just producing content all the time, great stuff to share, performances and parent engagement. So it should...
one of the things that Tilly mentioned about performance, and I don't think I've really laboured on it enough, is one of the things you can teach and you can teach and you can teach. But the way that a lot of our students consolidate everything they've learned is by performing, and that in itself is what brings the courage, and we raise the expectations about how they will stand on stage and perform, because it's there's a difference in knowing your lines and actually performing your lines, and there's a difference in performing your lines to your friends in a safe environment than to going out and doing it to people you've never met before. And that's where the courage comes, that's where the conviction comes from. And so with Tilly, who's offering all of her students as many different performance opportunities as possible, that's the icing on the cake, because that's where people really get to feel the adrenaline of stepping up and performing and shining in their own right. And that's key. That's what parents pay for. They want that proud moment, and believe me, they get it an awful lot, whether it's at a fete, in a theatre, in their school, on social media. Just seeing your child, being courageous is immense for all of our parents.
I'm really interested in kind of the day-to-day challenges, right, of running a business, and especially running a franchise. I know you've got support there, but there must be kind of day-to-day challenges, recurring things that are always coming up. What would they be, Tilly, for you, and then maybe Joe, for you from a head office point of view?
I think obviously, and for anyone who's listening who runs a business, I think it's always just wanting to keep it and and look after it and make sure it's like your baby, isn't it? So, I think when you run a business in a franchise or not, you never really have a moment where you're not thinking about, what can I do to make sure that, I'm being engaging? What can I do to make sure everyone's happy? I think a massive thing for me is like customer service. Like I'm quite, I guess a lot of people are probably really big on this, but it's such an important thing for me. And something perhaps without dwelling on that I found difficult in the past year is I try to have a really lovely rapport with my clients, with my parents, and just make sure that there is that lovely kind of connection with them throughout the week, and they're understanding, what we're doing on a Saturday and how we're working. And it's been hard with the distance actually to have that. So that's probably a really recent challenge that I found. Everything's very busy, we're in bubbles, and you're trying to really like get out there and speak to everyone, and you have to keep distance and all of that. It's still working, which is fine. But yeah, I think probably one of the the challenges for me as a performer is just making sure that, you know, my admin's like really there, like I'm really on top of all of that, because it's easy to be all bubbly and be at the front of house and be like, hi, it's Stagecoach, and then everything just be like a mess underneath it. So for me as a performer, I'd say admin's probably one of the most challenging things. I have to really be strict and use like little tools to make sure I'm creating lists and be really organized. And I think like the biggest challenge is just making sure I'm constantly on top of my game and making sure that I want to run this as a business, not just something that I kind of dip in and out of. Like, this is my world now, and just making sure that I put everything I've got into it, which can be challenging at times because you're trying to think of like, what can I do now? What can I do now? What can I do now? And like cherry pick different things. But again, going back to the network, that's why it's great to be part of the franchise.
Yeah, I guess those unsociable hours, always the same for every business, but yeah, if you're working evenings, weekends, this can be a challenge as well.
Yeah, I think when you first start, just like everyone, going back to opening a greenfield, obviously I was working in a primary school as well to sort of support the setup and keep, you know, I have such a passion for teaching too.
That's great for recruiting students as well, though, right?
Oh yeah, amazing recruiting students. Unfortunately, they weren't in my territory. They were. But yeah, you know, it's lovely just to keep in touch with students as well when you're trying to open something that's going to work with other students. But I sort of would do that, and then I'd come home and I'd sort of work till 12 just answering emails. And I think on a sort of light note and just as an angle to the business, I think when you work in a very front of house facing role, you can never really like plan your day too much because everyone's got their own lives to live. So a lot of questions, you might think, oh, today I'll spend a day doing this, but actually on a Friday, just before you start Stagecoach on Saturday, you'll get all the parents and the questions coming through. And it's great and it's lovely. You know, that's really positive. I'm so happy I have all these wonderful parents, but it's just, you can never quite plan it when you're in a sort of performing arts school. And I think it's the same for any sort of educational environment because you're working direct with people and you know, it's lovely, but there are always different challenges to face.
I mean, the thing that Tilly, you know, one of the benefits with being your own boss and running the franchise that we do is that actually your work is concentrated around a few days. And then the rest of your workload is across the rest of the week. So it really works for people who want a flexible approach to life. Often works with a lot of people if they've got families because they can be doing some of the admin work while the kids are at school. And then they are working at the weekend, Saturday morning, whenever it might be. And, you know, they can manage their families around it. But you're right, it can be tricky with the admin. And right now, we've had some franchisees that haven't been running for a while because of obviously what's been happening with COVID. So there's an awful lot. It feels like there's a mountain of admin to get over. But once you get back into the flow of things, it will flow, won't it? And it shouldn't like a big mountain that probably does at the moment. But I suppose, yeah, I can understand that from your perspective because you've got hundreds of parents to deal with and that in its own right will be.
To be honest, I think I'm just trying to think of challenging things because I just actually really love it. So I don't really know what else is like. It's probably just being organized. But yeah, I mean, if you ask me what's challenging, I think just, you know, just really just wanting to be like just wanting to grow it and expand it and it just keep creating this positive environment that children love. And actually that's probably the most challenging thing is when you think a student might not want to come back or they haven't necessarily maybe enjoyed, which you get because everyone changes their mind and children choose activities, you know, quite often it's led by their friends. So their friend comes to Stagecoach, so they come to Stagecoach, their friend goes to ballet down the road, so they go to ballet down the road. And you're like, and I think that's actually maybe that's the most challenging thing for me really is like not taking it to heart if it's not for everyone because I love it so much. I'm like, why don't you want to come?
That's the same for all businesses. I think you lose a customer moves on, it's a difficult one. In terms of normally look at like philosophies and things like that, but in terms of the stage, you talked about the model and the kind of the three aspects. And I think that for me, I don't know if it feels like that's a really strong USP. Like you mentioned there, ballet down the road, etc. But you're working on all these three areas that you call it triple threat. Everyone's got they can sing, dance and act. Would you say that's the biggest draw, the fact that they can do everything in one place?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the model that was set up 30 years ago, but unfortunately, a lot of people cottoned on and have copied the model now. So it's not unique to us anymore. I think what's unique to us is we invest a lot in understanding what parents want. We've invested an awful lot in research to make sure that we're on point and that we're still, delivering the very best quality. We've got quality checks all over our business. And that's very, very important to us as well, that we are delivering the very best performing arts education that we can for young people. But I think what we believe is our USP is actually creative courage for life, that line, because that articulates so beautifully what the essence of our business is. And that goes right from the top all the way down through to the teachers, to the children. The parents buy into it, we buy into it. And if you think about it, that's all you want for your children, is for them to think creatively and have courage for life. So it's, I think it's a really strong brand essence that we've actually registered. The line is so important to us. But it is. And when people hear the line and then understand what we do and what the franchisees do as well, they just get it. They absolutely get it and recognise that that's what they want for their children.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that's resonating now. Speaking of the recording earlier on about your stats in terms of the growth that you're finding and the trend, I don't know if you can expand on that as we come out of the restrictions. Feels like that's maybe another challenge that you have to manage. There was a positive one in terms of the take up and the demand and how you're going to service that across the network.
Yeah, it's, do you know what? Right now we're okay with it. So as we came out of lockdown in the UK, well, in England, because obviously Wales and Scotland are just catching up, we really weren't sure how our business would react, whether people wanted to come back, whether they were afraid.
Yeah, especially, I mean, predominantly, well, indoors, predominantly, I'm assuming 99%. So yeah, it's different.
We just didn't know. And so we forecast a relatively conservative number for what this is our summer term at the moment. So we forecast a relatively conservative number because we just really didn't know how it's going to go. And like I say, we were at 188% of that target, where that, if you look at what is happening, and for us, just to mention, in England at the moment as well, we are not even at full capacity because of the restrictions. So normally our classes are a class of 18 students. We have to operate at classes of 15 at the moment, but we have seen thousands more students want to join us this term. And ordinarily, before COVID, the summer term was always a bit of a tricky term because the weather's better and children want to go out and, want to be out with their friends and play parks and things like that. And what we have seen as a nation is unbelievable. We've never seen this before. And I think that's a testament to parents recognizing that it's been a really, really tough year for children. They are, in my opinion, the silent victims in all of this. They have struggled with inconsistent education, lack of social interaction with their friends. They've been living under a cloud of fear, because we have all been living under a cloud of fear. And as things are lifting, their life skills just aren't there. The confidence has diminished. And I think there's an appetite now for parents to go, we need to give them a power up, let those children get back to normality and just have fun. And if they're learning while they're having fun, then that's the best outcome for everybody. And I fundamentally believe that that's why we're seeing the interest that we are right now. Can we manage it? Yeah, we can. We've opened up 100. I wouldn't even know the final number because we still are going through that administration process, but we've had more schools open. Driven because we're capped at 15 per class, but also because of this extra demand. So it's a really positive environment to be in. And so we're so grateful for that after the year we've had, which was tricky for all businesses. So yeah, it's fantastic.
No, definitely. I think we'll probably link it in the show notes as well as a new report that came out yesterday in the Telegraph, I think, just on what you were touching on in terms of the effect on children, physically, mentally, emotionally, all the kind of effects that COVID's had. So yes, really positive. What we do normally is try and focus a little bit on you personally as well. So I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to ask, not too personal, but more about your opinion. So we ask about kind of your business routines. So anything that you do on a day-to-day basis that kind of keeps you focused and helps you deal with the challenges of leading an organization. So I don't know if you've got any routines that you do, whether you're early in the morning or you're having cold showers every morning, anything like that. But we got a few different ones for our guests.
Well, I mean, things have changed for me through COVID. I can't stay up after 10 o'clock anymore, but I'm waking up at 5:30. So there's been a complete body shift there. I wouldn't say routines, apart from my terrible habit is Diet Coke. So I have a couple of Diet Cokes a day, which gives me the boost to get through. But I'm exercising more. after work, so that I tend not to move all day. I sit and communicate all day, keep the businesses running over, and that's great, but it means I'm pretty sedentary. So for me personally is, living off the Diet Coke in the mornings, kicking off my day. I don't have caffeine. I don't drink tea or coffee, you see. So that's my caffeine hit. And then I do exercise in the evening. So that keeps me sane and energized for the business.
Yeah, it's a bit of a training after early evenings, a bit of a second wind, doesn't it? Get a bit of an energy after exercise, and so that's a good one. Are you still performing until at the moment, or is it all business focus at the moment?
Yeah, I sing jazz. So pre-pandemic, I used to just gig like on a Sunday, like kind of like chill out jazz. And so hopefully I might go back to that afterwards. But to be honest, as Joe was saying,
so it sounds like you'd be too busy with all the new signups to do.
Oh yeah, well, maybe after this podcast. So I think, and as Joe was saying actually about the beauty of stage coaches, it is, you have these days in the week when you work, and then you have these days where you can focus on admin and also like obviously not maybe in the initial phase, depending on your situation. For me, I had to work initially, but actually in the middle of last I stopped that, and now I'm fully focused on Stagecoach, which is just amazing. But yeah, I think for me, I actually have this really awesome tool called Evernote, and I just plan my day like the night before. So I'll like plan out what I want to hit in that day, and actually some useful tools from Stagecoach training, just about like keeping your space really clear and like your desk, and at night just like packing away like your desk, and so you can get up the next day with like a clear mind and a clear focus. And I just try and achieve like something every day that will really like help my business, whether that's calling a parent and just checking in with their child, making sure they've enjoyed the week, or whether it's just going through the register and just thinking, actually, I remember they were a bit wobbly in that session. I better just give them a ring, and all those little things that just kind of keep you like fresh and keep you going, I think is really important. So I make those little lists like every day, and then I try and like just check them off like physically. So I kind of get through my working day. And then obviously on a Saturday we're physical and we're there and everything runs a little bit smoother. What's that saying? Prepare to fail to prepare to fail.
Yeah, exactly. No, I love that in terms of the list as well. Being able to check it off and look back. Sometimes it's surprising how much work you've got done. You might feel like you've been flat out, and if you don't have it on the list, you kind of forget all the work you've been doing. So nice.
I think as well as the students having their own, like we said, there is like this growth to Stagecoach, and I think as well within like the franchisees as well, there's some different kind of angles to it. There's some franchisees who don't necessarily want to grow as much, and they're happy with the franchise they have, and then there's some franchisees who want to grow it and expand their business and buy multiple territories and things like that. So I think it all depends on and that is the beauty of Stagecoach. And obviously it's wonderful if you keep growing and keep expanding, and that's what builds an amazing business. And I think for me, that's where I'm sort of attacking it from, is I want this to be my career and my lifestyle, and I want to grow and expand and see how far I can take it. But also because of the amazing support in the network, you keep that quality as well, which is really important.
Fantastic. So last question for me, it's a bit of a reflective one. If you could go back in time and give your younger self some advice, whether it's about normally business advice, what would you go back and tell yourself before you kind of started out in your business journey? I don't know who wants to go first.
Tilly, have you got an answer ready to go?
If you can't tell, I can probably talk for English. Like,
go for it. I'll go.
Do you know what? This is actually something that I actually said to my teachers recently, because a lot of them are some of them are really strong actors and some of them are really strong singers, and the students, some of them are really strong singers and not so great dancers. And I used to really panic. I'm an actress singer, and dancing was never my really amazing thing that I loved. I loved dancing, and I actually did A-level dance, but I'm not really a dancer. And I forever was like, I need to go to this dance class. I need to really do this. And I kind of neglected did the things that I was really good at, like my singing and my acting. And I was like, I've got to be amazing at dance. I've got to be amazing at all three. I have to be amazing at all three. And I think my advice now to my younger self, and actually something I give to the students, is you can't always strive for perfection in everything, but you can channel your focus into something that you know you're good at and what you really love, and actually everything else will just fall into place. I think for a long time I sort of went round and round myself, like, oh, I want to be in this amazing show and I want to do this, and then suddenly now I've got Stagecoach and it's the best thing I ever did, and I wish I'd done it earlier actually. So I think it's just finding that focus and not stressing about, and I think that leads back to children and mental health, and wanting to get amazing grades in every single subject and getting through this really challenging time. Actually just take each day as it comes. The same with building a business. For anyone that is listening, take each day as it comes, make your list, like focus on what you want out of each day, and everything else just kind of falls into place around it.
Perfect.
And I think mine would be, and I've kind of learned this as I've aged, and I'm much older than both of you, but if I was going back to my younger self, it would be to trust my gut feel and act upon it at the time. Because I think sometimes that comes with maturity, but actually I wish I'd just got on with that a lot younger. I definitely do. Now I speak as I think, and things get done a lot quicker. And that would be my advice to all women in business, especially up and coming women in business, to be honest.
Love that. Thank you so much for your time, Tilly and Jo. Really appreciate it, and made a great episode.
Oh, thanks, James. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sports, or on my account at James_Ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle. I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sports.